I think we're done, Elston. I think we've successfully begun recording. If you're watching this, it worked. If you're, hey, Tim,
that's a pretty potentially big leap there.
Well, it doesn't matter because if no one's watching it, then I don't look stupid, right? Like it'll be a perfect crime.
I had a very apropos prior conversations here. I had a video fail on a podcast recording partway through recently. So the host went on like Mid-Journey and generated a description of our conversation and put that on the
oh, that's fun
thing as the replacement.
Speaking of AI, it's weirding me out that you're superimposed on your own background. That is, there's something like uncanny valley about the whole thing.
Yeah, I couldn't resist the phantom piano for the sake of the old days. I have no fingers. There we go.
That's good.
Yeah, it's very believable looking studio in the background.
I'm sorry I've called attention to it. I've obviously ruined the illusion now for everyone watching.
I just love it's kind of like stop motion. There's just like this little jitter around the edges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like how if I put my hand here, it kind of exposes my chair.
A little bit of tile. It's amazing, isn't it? Do you ever stop and think like how impressed like 10-year-old you would be with the technology we're all bored of at this point? Like as a nerd, like how long did you download that Phantom Menace trailer for? You know, like, and now it's just like all of everything.
Dude, I'll never forget. Dark Forces, the first-person shooter of LucasArts in the mid-90s, they made a sequel called Jedi Knight. They then made an expansion, what we now call DLC, but was in fact a box title, but was an expansion called Mysteries of the Sith, in which you played as Mara Jade. And that game boasted that they had color volumetric lighting. Like you would walk into a space and it wasn't just lit, it was lit with like purple light, and that was novel. And it was,
I remember it was Doom N64 that animated lights for the first time in a Doom, and that blew everyone's mind. The idea of lights that changed was impossible
unbelievable. And like the first time I saw ragdoll physics, where I was used to playing shooters where if you happened to kill a bad guy at the top of the stairs, they were like this wooden plank out over the abyss from the top, because it registered them as being on the landing at the top of the stairs, but they fell toward them, so there was just like stairs and then this corpse, you know, very severe rigor mortis. And the first time I played a game,
you still see that sometimes. In fairness, that still happens.
But the fact that now you more often, the thing is this, you like the over aggressive ragdoll physics of a body that's like cartoonishly falling down the stairs, how technologically just out of reach that was for the whole of my gaming upbringing. It's so true. When I look now at like,
well, just video calls, like even stuff that's more mundane, or we would think of as more, the idea that I'm talking, you know, over the Atlantic with you via video and we can both kind of see each other is incredible.
Yeah,
that didn't exist when
a third Earth away.
Yeah.
It's pretty astonishing. I remember one that blew my mind recently that gave me exactly the sentiment that you're describing, where I thought, now that's a thing that if I was exposed to as a kid might have broken my brain. Was I was looking at like an Instagram filter, or no, I was on Angela called me over Facebook Messenger, and they have all these silly filters. And one of them puts you in like a black and white, like comic kind of graphic novel space.
Okay.
Like a lot of like line art
kind of thing, or like
no, it's like almost like newspaper cartoon.
Oh, okay.
Like
Peanuts kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, very like just thin black and white line art. You know, no even shading or anything. Just very basic, but like very convincingly that aesthetic. And then I realized it's rendered in 3D, and if I'm on my call and I just rotate, the background moves with me. Like it put me in a space that they had built out in like a little 3D kind of model that it gives you a camera positioning and actually moves relative using presumably the accelerometer or whatever on your phone.
And the image tracking. Yeah, it's wild. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I thought, and this is the point of this is so that on a call, I can click it and make the other person go, oh, that's funny. And then that's it. It's done. It has served its purpose. It has nothing beyond the flash of a cracked smile on behalf of the recipient. That's all it offers.
To be fair, 80% of human creativity and invention has been targeted on making someone smirk a little bit and feel happy. Like that's pretty much.
Yeah, that's true.
We're all trying to impress someone, aren't we? You know.
I think that's a very fair assessment. I don't know how much work went into creating a thing like that, but I know that for the majority of my life, that would have been considered, like when you just think about what a revolution it was when you saw Toy Story, the first fully 3D animated, and it was like, I can't believe this. I've never seen anything like this, you know? And it's just, it's funny how
You're listening to Old Men with Mike and Austin. Old Men with Mike and Austin. It's,
I was just going to say.
Back in our day, it's also great when you go back and watch old sci-fi, like how badly Minority Report has aged. Not for any of the massive predictions, but because they're all using discs. And just that looks so weirdly anachronistic now.
But it's discs, isn't it like little glass, like transparent?
Like little,
Yeah, they're cool. But I think
they're
the best
cool
part
discs,
is
but
when they're
Get
walking
Bluetooth,
through when they're walking through the public spaces and the ads are like, John Anderton, have you bought life insurance or whatever? Like that one's pretty much already here.
Yeah.
And in fact,
even
maybe
more
even
targeted,
more
right? It's around the stuff you're enjoying. Yeah.
Exactly. John Anderton, have you bought this anti-police, evasion software?
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole film. I was just talking to somebody the other day about how I think it is a criminally underrated Spielberg film. That the whole sequence where he's getting the eye transplants, and he's lying in the bathtub, and the little spider droids are hunting for him, and the camera is doing this long take up through the ceiling where they've built this whole set of adjacent apartments, and so the camera can fly in and out and come down and up and back up on a crane, and all as a single long take before
that was reference. We used that as reference for John Wick. Hex, like that was the idea. Like I love that scene, the kind of that overview, and then
now that you say that, I feel like I remember us talking about that. I had forgotten.
I think what's beautiful about it, it's just a magical thing that happens when you combine like Philip K. Dick's like cynicism and Spielberg's utter lack of cynicism. Like that kind of it's peanut butter and jelly, man. It just works. It's lovely.
Couldn't agree more. To me, the double whammy of around 2000 of Minority Report and AI, where because AI had the same chocolate peanut butter of
the Kubrick
and Spielberg. And yeah, he that seems to bring out, especially these days, where the unbridled optimism, like I'm a very optimistic person, but it's just one of those weird, we're somehow susceptible to those zeitgeist shifts where I look at a thing and I go, E.T. is one of the greatest films ever made, and it makes me cry like a little child. If E.T. came out today unchanged, it would read as cheesy and but in ways that I don't see it as cheesy. I see it as
that the world changing, or is that just you getting older? Do you think?
Well, I think it's like the world changes because the people change. So like you can't resist. It's like on a certain level we're just susceptible to the zeitgeist shifts. I'm perhaps less so because I really like those optimistic feel good things, although I fucking love Andor, and it's the most cynical that Star Wars has ever been by far. So like I look at it and I go, I'm kind of over the bright-eyed Luke Skywalker adventurer sort of default position of Star Wars, at least letting it rest for a time and going into this just full-on dystopian 70s sci-fi take.
Yeah, I'm a few episodes behind you, so I'm going to be very careful with myself, but
I haven't watched today's.
No, I've only seen up to 7 because I'm watching it with Carrie.
I'm pretty sure every episode is better than the one before. Like 100%. It has just been a steady linear curve. Yeah.
I just think it's taking the material seriously. I don't think I wouldn't say it's necessarily more cynical than Star Wars. I think it's just engaging seriously with the idea of rebellion and of fascism, and it's taking the source material seriously. It's respecting the source material. I think there's a truth to that. However,
maybe cynical was the wrong word. Maybe that's a misdiagnosis rather, because it's more like ultra realistic, whereas the originals are a fantasy. It's not, it's literally, it is literally like Tolkien in space kind of style of let's build a world and let's build a very Joseph Campbell archetypal adventure. And while the world building is shockingly thorough, it is not as much about that. Whereas Andor is like, okay, let's zoom in on the world building for a bit.
It's making the subtext text, isn't it? It's pulling up those, way to put it. The people in the background are becoming the story, which was also what was good about Rogue One as well. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So you definitely need to get caught up.
I can't wait.
To that,
an actor I've worked with, I hear, is doing some very interesting stuff in some of the more recent episodes.
Oh my God. Just when you think you've got him pegged as like someone who you're like, I've seen what he's capable of. He just pulls out something where you're like, man, the vulnerability in what he's
I think he's incredible. People underestimate. We're talking about, for anyone who doesn't understand, we're talking about Andy Serkis, who I've had the pleasure, and
whenever he's brought up in Entertainment Weekly, it's going to have Andy Serkis and then parentheses Andor, volume. Yeah,
100%. I got him. He recorded his stuff for Volume. He was on a day off from it must have been Force Awakens, and he was going to his kid's birthday party, and he recorded on the way there. So yeah, I'm obviously a key part of his career. He's like a lot of actors who are very good at doing roles in kind of popular entertainment. He's wildly underestimated at every turn. Like, he is phenomenally good. He came under
fire because he was getting so much credit for Smeagol, and there was a little bit of this pushback of like, the VFX people, and are half of this performance. And I remember looking at that and going, yeah, but I've watched the like behind the scenes of him just walking around in the performance capture suit, and especially when you watch him in these other roles he's done, and like, that is real acting. That is not just throw on a suit and it all happens. I
think there was an unfortunate turn of phrase where he referred to like motion capture as like wearing a costume. I think that kind of stuff was offensive to.
Oh, I see. Like,
because the animations obviously add a lot to the performance. I don't think intentionally. Sure. Like from like I said, he's a good bloke. So I assume it was as we've all done, said in error quickly to a journalist and regretted for the rest of time. It's
sure. But, kind of a candid thing that got away. I don't know. I obviously direct. I've never interacted with him, but just seeing the evolution of his roles over the last 20-ish years
ever since Volume, I think that was the moment. Volume was the turning point. That was
that happened, and then
that heralded the
Kevin Feige, and it was like, you'd be good in Black Panther.
I'm not saying I discovered him, but I kind of discovered him.
Like, everybody just assumed Smeagol was like this horrendously emaciated
from New
actor.
Zealand. I was like, this kid's gonna go far.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, to that subject though of cheesy, it is so like, I don't like to think that I've gotten cynical, or that I've, like, when you said has the world moved on? Like, it's a genuinely interesting question that I think about, where it's like certain games. Did you play Return to Monkey Island?
Oh, not yet. I've got, my backlog is wild at the moment. Yeah, I will get to it. I can't wait.
It kind of deals with this question in a way, but I don't want to go any further and for sake of spoilers. But like, it's one of those that while playing it, I had this initial feeling of like, I was somehow expecting something new or expecting something different, and I was initially like, maybe this, like, the exact formula of the early 90s point and click adventure isn't resonating quite as with me these days. But then at some point the game is like, we as game designers see what you're aimed at, and that idea is going to make its way into the actual fabric of the game. So it has its own kind of, in a way, meta commentary on itself in a sense.
Yeah.
But I won't say any more. But to me, it ended up being very affecting. By the end of the game, I was actually quite taken by it because I was like, wow, this is also a study of that progression, like that we all go through. And when we look back at something that we did 30 years ago and we have to examine our relationship with it as just fundamentally new people. It's an interesting question because there's a lot of things that start to become kind of cheesy and uninteresting over time.
You're listening to Two Old Guys with Mike and Austin.
I will say something that is not cheesy that I loved. This is complete left field, but just randomly thinking about all the Game Awards nominations, I was happy to see the new Plague Tale get a handful of them because I freaking love those games. And
I'm way behind. I've not played the first one yet.
Dude, I don't know what it is that...
I think the rats put me off, and I just was like, nah, I don't need that in my life.
Well, and rightly so. They're fucking unnerving. They do such a good job at just creating this writhing body.
Industry-leading rat rendering, right?
So.
Like, really, like... Yeah, they've pioneered it in the way that Last of Us pioneered the rope. Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
It really is. It's one of those where... Again, maybe it's an interesting, maybe it was a subconscious connection to the whole idea of what's cheesy, but like I find myself so in love with the two voice actors who lead the brother and sister, Hugo and Amicia. The boy has that classic, like you remember, did you watch Haunting at Bly Manor, the second Mike Flanagan Netflix series?
I didn't. You got to stop naming stuff I've not seen. But yeah, no, I've not seen that. I've not. That's the one I've.
Did you play
seen.
Thomas Was Alone?
No, I'll get to it eventually. I heard the guy who made it's kind of a dick. I only came into like Flanagan like with
Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
I mean, that's his crowning achievement so far. But in Bly Manor, there's these little kids, and they've got the classic like Mary Poppins, young British like. Well, hello there. Like, there's just so
that's how
like
we all sound at childhood.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it felt cute but overwrought a bit to me in Bly Manor, but it didn't turn me off of the show. And there were times where I found them actually really charming, but it does have a bit of a kind of almost like cartoon British child. And if I zoom out, I try to be objective. Hugo, the brother in Plague Tale, talks, despite the fact that it takes place in like 11th century France, he basically has that exact voice where he's like, Amicia, what are we going to do? Like it feels sort of dialed up to 10, adorable British child to my ear. Certainly doesn't sound like a French accent to me. But I
mean, that's a tale as old as time, British being the stand-in European voice.
Well, yeah. Well, and in fairness, I think they have like, I think it's because I bought it in America and it defaulted to like, I think if I had to guess that game, because it's a French developer, I bet they have essentially two main actors. I bet they have like an English language main one, but an equally, not just like localization, but one they probably put just as much care into auditioning, all that. If I had to guess, I don't know that, but I would be surprised if not, because it's just such a well-made game and so thought out in so many ways. But in any case, the boy, he's so like, I'm going to be adorable, painfully so all the time. But it just works for me. It's one of those where I'm like, I don't know why this doesn't feel cheesy. But I need to protect this child. It is working. It is intended function so effectively to me. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know why it doesn't read as cheesy because they go hard on it in the sequel as well. And I fucking loved every minute of the sequel. So I have no explanation.
Maybe that. I mean, maybe sometimes you got to put a bit of grit in the oyster, right, to get the pearl. Like I think sometimes you do have to have a little thing that dings a bit can actually make it cuter potentially, or make you care about that character more because they're imperfect. Maybe that's what it is.
But it doesn't read as an imperfect character. It reads as like. Again, I had to force myself to try to objectively listen to it because I just found myself loving it. I just found myself really loving it. And then I zoomed out and I thought, I bet this is actually kind of cheesy. And I don't know why I don't feel like it is. It just, to me, it reads I just kept marveling. I kept going, this is such great performance in these games for both of them. Although I do think that the second one does fall a little bit prey to the sister, your playable character of Amicia, being like, kind of hyper aggressively urgent in way, like occasionally in moments where it feels like that emotion's been played out like 3 times consecutively, and there's nothing new happening here. So it's probably a script thing more than an actor thing, but overall,
also a second story in a trilogy thing, maybe. That can be, you kind of have to keep your
I don't know. Again, I will avoid spoilers, but while I could imagine them making a third, it definitely ends in a way that if it were to end here, it's a good ending. It works. Like, it's a good way to, like, I imagine. I mean, look, the first one was, especially for the size team, I think the first one was quite successful, and I think the second one has come exploding out of the gate as well. I recommend it. I played it because I was doing a podcast with the composer, French composer Olivier de Rivière, and I realized I haven't played any of this guy's games. So I went on a binge and played like all of his kind of most well-known games, but this one was probably the most famous. Well, I guess the original thing that kind of put him on the map was that game Remember Me from like 10 years ago.
I really have a soft spot for that game. I've got the art book of that game. The game itself wasn't incredible, but the art of it was really nice. That kind of minimalist, kind of futuristic, kind of a bit Mirror's Edgy, a bit. It was a nice aesthetic. Yeah.
Yep. And his score to that was very interesting. Like very, I don't know how else to describe it than to say progressive, because it was like, he did a thing I'd always fantasized about, doing something along these lines, and then he just kind of went for it in a way that was different than what I would have done, but just so compelling where, he recorded a big orchestral score, but he always had the orchestra kind of broken up into constituent parts in the way that he recorded, so that like you're listening to the orchestra and then he starts to apply weird effects on like the strings only. So you'll have brass playing a melody and then the strings start to like glitch out. And it's like, so it's like, imagine you're at a concert looking at a sea of musicians and some subset of them randomly start to get pixelated, like despite the fact that they're all playing together. And I remember going,
write this idea down for no reason whatsoever. Not working on anything that would be relevant for that. Okay.
Yeah, indeed.
I did have a look behind me because I do own the art book, but I think it must be downstairs because I'm not seeing it there, which is annoying. Because that would have been
sorry.
That would have been the best bookshelf grab I've ever done if I had it there. Oh well.
Oh well. Well, look, we are at an interesting crossroad because I have to leave right now.
You have to go. And apparently Alanah's joining us shortly. I think Troy is also joining us shortly.
You might need a monologue.
I might.
Just go and do a reading.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. I think I might just read from like I've got the Tron Junior novelization here. I might just read a bit of that.
Yeah,
I'll message Alanah and see if she's joining us. But yeah, if you need to go, no worries.
Yeah,
and I'll see you later.
Sorry. Hopefully,
me and the listeners will see what happens next. This is a real cliffhanger. None of us know. Alanah could come in instantly, or I could literally be here for half an hour.
It's a genius thing. All right, sir. Well, good luck.
Well, listener, it is now just you and me. I'm just going to read. We can cut this in maybe if you want. I'm going to read from the Tron Junior novelization. When Sam Flynn was a little boy, his dad, Kevin, told him a story every night before he went back to the office. Kevin didn't work the night shift or anything. He owned a software company, Encom, and he worked there a lot. Sam loved his father's stories because they were almost always about Tron, the hero of the popular video game his dad had invented. The grid is the digital frontier, Kevin would tell Sam. Add quantum pairing, biodigital teleportation, enfoldment, and they have the power to change everything. Hold up, Dad, Sam would think. I'm only 7. It's just page 1. We're off. Even though Sam wasn't quite old enough to understand everything his dad said, he loved the stories anyway, and would always try to follow along. I imagined what it looked like inside the computer, Kevin would say to his son. I kept dreaming of a world I thought I'd never see. This is the opening of the movie. Then one day, you got in, Sam finished, always right on cue. I got in, his dad would echo. Sam understood this part of the story. His dad had actually gotten into a computer. He'd play the games from the inside. The world behind the computer screen was very beautiful and more dangerous than I ever imagined, his father would explain. But with the help of a brave warrior named Tron, I took down the evil master control program. Then I got back out. The story always ended there, except for one important night. I tried to forget the digital world, Kevin informed his son, but I couldn't let it go. I kept tinkering, and one day I got inside again. Sam got excited. This part of the story was new. It was my world, my creation, Kevin said. But I needed help to build a new system, so I created a program that could think, like me, like you. I named it Codified Likeness Utility, or CLUE for short. But then something unexpected happened. A miracle. His father did not go on. Sam pleaded with him to stay home that night. Sam wanted to hear more of the story, but Kevin shook his head. I have to go, Sam, his dad said. I wish I had a Jeff Bridges impression. We've got to see how the story ends, right? Sam nodded, but his eyes were filled with disappointment. Trying to cheer him up, Kevin promised Sam that they would go to Flynn's arcade first thing the next morning. They could play a couple of levels of the games that Kevin had invented, Space Paranoids, and of course, Tron. Can we play on the same team? Sam asked. We're always on the same team, kiddo, his father said, before stepping out of the bedroom. They were always in it together. But that wasn't true. That night, Kevin Flynn disappeared. And I believe I'm veering into copyright law at this point by reading any more. I'm still on my own. I'm going to go mad. Slowly but surely. Many years passed, and the pain from his father's disappearance stayed with Sam, refusing to fade. His dad's last words still echoed inside Sam's brain. We're always on the same team, kiddo. Sam shook his head angrily, trying to drown out the words. He revved his motorcycle's engine. The wall of noise battered his ears, but the memories would not go away. Some team we are, Sam thought. I'm here, Dad. I've been here all along. Where the heck are you? Heat lightning rippled across the night sky. Up ahead, cars hurtled along the freeway. Without warning, traffic slowed to a crawl. Bright red brake lights blinked in the night. Instead of slowing down, Sam sped up, expertly darting his bike around the scarlet lights. I do like, as an aside, I love that the opening to Legacy establishes every single skill he could need for the rest of the movie. It's good. I have to get there on time, he thought, especially tonight. It was exactly 20 years ago to the day that Sam's dad had finished his bedtime story, left for the office, and vanished. At the time, Kevin Flynn's disappearance had been front-page news. After all, he owned one of the biggest companies in the world. There was a huge media circus. Reporters camped out in front of Sam's home, but the stories were all about the fate of Encom. No one really cared about young... I feel like I'm filibustering. No one really cared about young Sam. He was just a kid with a mum who died a few years before and a genius dad who'd gone missing, without even saying goodbye. It's that stupid company's fault my dad is gone, Sam thought. Encom was always more important to Dad than me. After his father vanished, Sam inherited a huge stake in his company, but Sam didn't care. He pretended the company didn't exist, except on one day every year, the anniversary of his father's disappearance. Every year on that day, Sam pranked Encom. Once he performed a flaming motorcycle stunt at the company barbecue. Another year he hacked into the CEO's computer. Then there was the time he bungee jumped during a big press junket. Sam knew these wild pranks could never make up for a life without his father, but the stunts gave him satisfaction. This is good backstory. On that one day a year, he made sure everyone at Encom remembered that he was still here, and that his dad wasn't. It was, in a weird way, his only connection to the father he would probably never see again. For tonight's very special anniversary, Sam had planned something really spectacular. Pulling free of his memories, Sam gave a sharp jerk on his motorcycle handlebars and cut across 6 lanes of traffic. He blew down an off-ramp, ran a red light, and swerved into a narrow alley. Finally, he parked... I have this, by the way, on my desk because it's useful for spellings and for terminology. I've lost my space with that little side. Ran a red light and swerved into a narrow alley. Finally, he parked the cycle on a big commercial boulevard. In the daylight hours, these streets were very busy. Now they were dark and deserted. Everyone was home with their families. With his backpack slung over his shoulder, Sam jogged towards Encom Tower. In the quiet shadows of the night, a young man joined him. The kid wore a dark hoodie, black jeans, and dark sneakers. This was Sobel. He was an acquaintance of Sam's. Sam didn't have friends. "You were on time," Sobel whispered gleefully. "That's good. Synchronization is good." Together, the two jogged to a steel security door near Encom's loading dock. Sam pulled up the cord hanging around his neck. Attached to it was a USB device. He plugged the device into the electronic door lock. Then he connected to a handheld keypad with a tiny LED screen. "We take down the big guy up there," Sobel whispered. "That is assassin cool. That is rep, bro." I assume this wasn't going to be a British actor. "Huge rep," Sam quietly replied, still working the keypad. "But why are we always messing with the same guys?" Sobel asked. "I know they're master of the universe corporate evil style, but I want to hit other villains too. My game is too strong for just one enemy." "You do have mad game," Sam said half-heartedly. "You do have mad game." His eyes on the hundreds of cipher codes running through his device. He knew one of them would open the lock. "You're courageous, Sam," Sobel said. "You're my Butch Cassidy. This is just the beginning." Sam noticed something on the screen just then. "Uh-oh." "What's up?" Sobel asked, worrying his voice. "They added a new security cipher," Sam explained. "The code I hit. I might have just called the cops." Sobel's eyes grew big. "Cops?" Sam shrugged. "So we get caught." "This is where reps are made, assassin." But now Sobel had gone completely pale. "If I'm caught by the cops, call my stepmom." "If I'm caught by the cops, I assume they mean they'll call my stepmom." He took off down the street. "My stepmom!" Sam rolled his eyes, figured the only person he could rely on was himself. "Okay, Sundance," he called. "See you on the flip side," he added silently. Just then, the multiple locks clicked, and the security door opened. Sam smiled, tucked the USB device into his jacket, and slung his backpack over his shoulder. Then he took a deep breath and darted through the door. I'm going to have to stop. I do like it in novelizations where you get scenes that are different than what was in the movie. It's interesting. Right, I'm going to stop recording. Cheers. Don't know if this is usable. Bye.